Michael, the fundamental driver intellectually in my life has been, in retrospect, the mind-body problem. How can you create a human mind? What is consciousness? I did a doctorate in neuroscience, not that that helped any, but that was part of the motivation. When I began to consider the possibility of theism as entering this picture, it obviously creates a whole new level of constraints on that question. So what I'd really appreciate understanding is the area, so-called theological anthropology. If you believe in a theology in God, what is the study of humankind? Yep. And then I want to focus specifically on the nature of mind.
Okay. So theological anthropology, as you pointed out, is addressing the question of human nature or the nature of persons, but through a theological lens. That is, it has to take account of either claims that are made in revealed texts or claims that are central to systematic theology. So what are those claims? And actually there are a variety of different claims. For example, the claim that human beings are made in the image of God is part of theological anthropology. So what does that imply exactly? Quite a controversial topic. But there's also the question of how we understand human nature so that that understanding is compatible with certain central theological doctrines. So, for example, the doctrine of immortality holds that human beings in some way survive this physical life. Right? What does that require? For some theists, the idea that human beings have free will has implications for how we think about the metaphysics of human persons.
The continuation of personality, personal identity, because you have to go through this life and then potentially another life. And
for sure.
How do you have identity?
There's that as well. And so some people think that the biblical text and these various theological doctrines absolutely require that human beings are or have immaterial souls. And there's some theologians and philosophers who think that these doctrines and the biblical text absolutely require that we be nothing more than physical beings. So you have people drawing really quite different conclusions from the theological evidence.
I think this is one of the most fundamental questions of reality. Whether there is some non-physical component that has to do with human beings.
I agree, and and there are these competing pressures. So let me just say, since I know you want to talk a bit about the dualist view, on the materialist view, the Christian materialism is a view that's been increasing in popularity.
Yes.
Not just because there's apparent pressures on dualism, but because some people think that the text of Scripture is best understood in a physicalist way. So the idea that there is a future resurrection seems to indicate that the body is really important. In fact, the biblical evidence, the biblical data on the badness of death seems much more consistent with a materialist view than a dualist view. Death is not so bad on the dualist view. It's really bad on the materialist view. Right? So if you're thinking about how we can best make sense of the claims made in Scripture, some people think the materialist view is actually preferable. But traditionally, the dualist view has been more predominant in theology, and that view requires that there is an immaterial soul which really is the bearer of our identity into eternity.
Looking at the Hebrew Bible, at least, the terms ruach or nephesh, which are translated as soul, are all in many other places translated in ways that don't imply a soul. So I personally can't see an immortal soul, at least in the Hebrew text. I'm thinking the New Testament, which I'm much less familiar with, it's more controversial. There's always proof texts, I think, in both directions.
That's right, there are. So, there are claims, Paul, for example, saying that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Mm-hmm. Right, so for a Christian materialist, it's a struggle to figure out what that could mean.
Tomorrow you'll be with me in paradise.
That's right. Then there are also some metaphysical problems, right, that arise. So, for example, on the materialist view, it looks like you go out of existence at a certain time and come back into existence at another time. But it looks like existence across a temporal gap like that it's very hard to make sense of that. Why doesn't that thing just count as a duplicate, as opposed to being a continuation of you? That's a really hard metaphysical problem to solve.
So if you do that, and this is from a theistic point of view, so you die here, you're a materialist here, you die here, and then there's this gap. It doesn't matter if this gap is 10 seconds or a trillion years. It doesn't make any difference. How do you bridge the gap? Well, you have to assume that there's something unique here that God preserves in some way or has some existence, and then And then if God had that, the idea is why couldn't you do multiple ones? And so
That's right.
And so you have duplications of
That's right. So there are a few different solutions. One is to say that, in fact, something of the dying person is preserved in certain ways. This is a view that Leibniz held, for example. Leibniz argued that we shrink down to something really, really small. And then when we get to the resurrection, God makes it really, really big. So that way you don't have
freeze drying.
That's right. So that way you don't have that discontinuity.
Right,
Other people claim, well, you can have the temporal discontinuity as long as there's some kind of causal connection that can exist across that temporal gap. So whether those views
But that has to be
out,
kind of unique, or else you would have the duplication problem.
it does. So it has to be similar to, if there is a causal connection at all, it has to be similar to the kinds of connections that obtain between your existence at one moment in time and your existence at the next moment in time, right now as an embodied organism. Can you have that but still have the temporal gap in place? And that's a controversial question.
Yeah. I have to tell you that the solution of non-reductive physicalism has always been a difficult one for me. It sounds like wanting to have your cake and eat it, and I'm not sure it provides. I'm not sure that it either solves the problem or doesn't introduce an even bigger problem.
Well, it is a puzzling view, and it's not clear that it solves problems like the temporal gap problem, because
No, certainly, yeah.
right, if it turns out that the physical thing is required in order for you to exist, well, in that period of time where the physical thing isn't there, we still have a gap to account for. So it certainly doesn't help you with that. I will add another dimension to this, and that is, if you think that in some way the notion of instantiating the divine image is important and is a metaphysical claim, there is something odd about the materialist view. It's hard to know what it would mean for a material thing to be the image of an invisible, immaterial thing. I think that is a puzzling claim. But it does solve certain other problems, right? Like these temporal gap problems and so on. Right. But what it does make quite mysterious is doctrines like the resurrection of Jesus and of ourselves into eternity. The body looks like it's completely dispensable. And so how do you explain its role? It's certainly not part of our identity on the dualist view. It's just some clothing that we wear. If we really do persist in the interim period, it's not part of our identity.
Well, I mean, some claim that's a kind of a partial part of your identity, that you're not really identity until that, whatever you want to call it, soul is a bad word because it has a lot of baggage, whatever that is, has to join back with the body to be the real thing, but there's some hazy state that it can exist.
Yeah, well, it has to join back with the body to be the full thing, maybe. But on the dualist view, if it's really true that you survive that interim period, then there's nothing about the body that's essential for you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be surviving in the interim period.
So, as a betting man right now, tell me a secret. What is your view? What do you think the answer to that is? And I promise I won't tell anybody.
Actually, I change my mind on this frequently. But if I had to bet, I would say something like emergentism is true. That is that there is a physical being there's a physical being from which certain powers emerge, which are essential for there to be a human person.
But emergence, the way that's defined, that's entirely physical. To me, that's a distinction with no difference.
Well, that also is a controversial question. What does emergence really amount to? But for the strong emergentist view, what arises out of the configuration of the complex physical system are powers that can't be explained in terms of the powers of the constituent parts. So you really do get something that's new and can't be explained just by appeal to the power of the parts. Now, again, some people think that this is just hocus pocus, but there are some pretty intriguing examples from a variety of different sciences that look like they point to something like real strong emergence. I think the jury's still out on whether it's real, but if it is, then I would actually find that to be the most attractive position to take.